Father Simon, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Father Simon Esshaki.
Yeah, Esshaki, but you can call me whatever.
Yeah. So, well, that's the thing is, it's an English pronunciation of Chaldean name?
Yeah,
Arabic
Chaldean,
name?
Aramaic.
Oh, Aramaic.
Yeah,
okay.
We speak Aramaic.
Well, let me ask you this: what's the difference between Arabic and Aramaic? Because a lot of people will want to know that.
Yeah, they're both Semitic languages.
Yeah.
Aramaic is the language of that was spoken in Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq. Arabic was a language that was made popular because of Islam. The Chaldean people do speak Arabic, though.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities. You know, a lot of words are the same or similar, but Aramaic is a more ancient language.
It'd be like Spanish, maybe, and Latin, where some of the words are the
kind of.
Yeah. Okay, so you're Chaldean.
Yes.
You're here in San Diego. Well, you're not quite in San Diego. What city are you in?
I'm in El Cajon, which is like. Are we technically in El Cajon right now?
Were you there? We're technically in El Cajon. Yes, we're very close to
Because I have to drive
Santee.
13 minutes to get here, so
I know.
Wasn't that bad?
You know that we decided to do these longer interviews, and so we have a travel budget. So so we decided, well, let's spend to get Father to come that 13 miles, and it's 59 cents a mile, so it's going to be a significant check for you. I think it'll be above $7.
Yeah, I'll just send the bill to you guys.
Your family's been in Iraq, what we call Iraq. It's had a million different names probably for, I don't know, 1,000 years, 5,000 years? How long? You don't even know.
A long time. Yeah, I don't even know.
So why are you in San Diego? What brings a Iraqi guy, Chaldean, to San Diego?
Yeah, in the mid-90s, or actually early 1900s, I should say, a lot of Chaldean people started to immigrate to America and to other parts of the world as well, but mostly to America. But the greatest wave of immigration was in the late 20th century, and a lot of it was because of the persecution that the Chaldeans faced in Iraq. The Chaldeans are the Christian majority of Iraq, but this very, very small minority of the country in its population. And so the Christians were very much persecuted, especially as of late. A lot of people probably know with ISIS.
Actually, I don't understand. There is something I don't understand about that. Yeah. Muhammad, 600s, it's probably Islam has been there since the 700s.
Right.
Why the 20th century? Like, why are there Christians that are still there century after century, thriving, doing fine? Why all of a sudden in the 20th century
Honestly, it's something that I wonder as well.
Oh, really? You do?
Honestly, yeah. Because they had been thriving together for so many years. But I do think it was a gradual thing where there was, I think it's safe to say, there was a Christian majority, or at least a lot more in the country. But over the years and the centuries, it's really diminished. And so it got to a point where in the early 2000s, it was, I would say, less than 3%, let's say, Christians in the whole country. And now it's very much less than 1%. But I would say over the years, it just gradually got a lot smaller, the Christian population over there.
Is there pressure that comes from living within a Muslim society? Do you think that kind of, over the centuries, you just lose people who don't want to resist it anymore and just like, it'd be easier if I was just Muslim?
I mean, I don't know that. No, I don't know that a lot of our people actually converted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think they were killed, a lot of them.
Yeah.
And they ended up also leaving eventually.
So where were you born?
So I was born in San Diego. I'm a first-generation Chaldean American.
That's why you have that heavy San Diego accent.
There you go. My parents came here in the late 70s.
Okay.
And they got married here, actually, and then they have been here since. A lot of people came before that, and people are still actually coming now, but the biggest wave was when ISIS was taken over.
Yeah. Okay. I do want to talk with you about that, but I want to know you're born here in the U.S. What language is spoken in the home when you're a child?
So you mentioned Arabic and you asked about that. So my family actually moved from the northern villages of Iraq, where mostly Aramaic or just Aramaic is spoken, and it's just either Chaldeans or Assyrian people there. But they moved like a few generations ago. They moved to the city in Baghdad, the capital, and so they started to speak Arabic. And so my family, although they knew Aramaic and they spoke it, but they spoke a lot of Arabic. So I did grow up actually speaking Arabic. And while most Chaldeans, I would say the majority of them and the children that grew up here, they grew up speaking Aramaic and they know Aramaic very well. I actually didn't, I knew very little, but I didn't really learn it until I joined the seminary.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Because it's a liturgical language. Is it a liturgical?
It is a liturgical language and a spoken language as well.
Yeah. But you can't celebrate Chaldean Mass without. Do you say Mass or do you call it something else?
We call it actually the word for it we just say Mass, but the word for it is Raza Alahaya. It means the divine mysteries.
Okay.
That's really the word for it.
But you need Aramaic to celebrate that. You gotta.
Every single Mass liturgy has Aramaic in it for sure, but we do have, like here in America, we have English Masses, but there's always a little bit of Aramaic. There's some hymns that have been in our liturgy for centuries, and so we still sing those. We chant the gospel, for example, in Aramaic at every Mass, and English as well.
Yeah, but then what about the Eucharistic prayer?
The Eucharistic prayer, we say it in English when it's a English crowd Mass.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So how big is the community? How many Chaldean Catholics here in the San Diego area?
There's probably about 40 to 50,000
wow.
here in San Diego. Yeah, this is the second biggest Chaldean population in America. The first is Michigan, and this is the second biggest. I'm very glad my parents chose San Diego.
Nothing against Michigan, but
nothing against Michigan. I'm actually going there on Monday.
You're coming from Iraq.
Yeah,
come to San Diego. Come on. At least we got a desert nearby. You feel at home. Okay, so 40, maybe 40,000 or so. How many parishes do you have here?
Here in San Diego, we have 4 parishes, and we have a mission in Temecula. We have a couple missions where it's that we don't own a church, but we have people within a community, and we rent out a church, and a priest will either live there or go there every week for Mass. So we have 4 here in San Diego, actually 3 in El Cajon, and then 1 in Spring Valley, and then the one in Temecula.
But when I go to, whenever there's a Chaldean event or something, there seem to be a lot of men who are maybe monks or maybe, I don't know what you call. Do you have a monastery here? What do you?
Yes, we do have a monastery. It's actually probably like a 5 to 7 minute drive from here, and it's at one of our other churches, which is St. John Chaldean Church in El Cajon, and there's the only Chaldean monastery outside of Iraq is here, actually, and we have 10 monks there now. It's a beautiful monastery, and it's a really great experience because people that go to that church, they have the opportunity to pray with the monks and to get the experience of seeing people consecrating their life to Jesus. And it's from the Chaldean liturgical heritage that they pray and that they live their life. So it's a beautiful thing to experience.
All right, well, let me ask you about the ISIS period then.
Yeah.
Because it's horrific, and I think it's visceral for Catholics in the sense that it harkens back to a time that I think many people thought was in the past of, Christian people being crucified, Christian people being martyred. You had priests and sisters and laity who gave witness to the drawing of the shedding of their blood, and not just a few. It really seemed almost apocalyptic. What did that mean for Chaldean people, Iraqi people here in the U.S.?
Well, here in the U.S., because they are so connected to the people back home, they have relatives there. And so not only the relatives, but the church communities are so united all throughout the world. You know, we're here in the U.S. In Canada, there's a eparchy, like diocese, you know, and Europe, Australia, but we're all very much connected and with the community in Iraq. And so the people that were being persecuted over there had relatives and friends out here, and just the church community out here. And so it was so devastating to see the persecution that the people faced. They had to just leave their villages. They were in their villages living very peaceful lives, and they just had to leave with just what they could grab in a moment, because their lives were about to be taken from them if they did not give in to the demands of ISIS.
So did some of them make it here?
A lot of people came here.
They did?
A lot, thousands.
So we have people here living within 13 miles of us
within
suffered
1 mile,
through
there's a lot here,
a horrific persecution.
Yeah, and we here in America, especially, you know, the clergy and the church, we had to bring those people in and those children into our church communities. And so a lot of the kids and the youth here are, lived in that environment, in that war-torn environment. If not ISIS, it was from, years before the early 2000s. A lot of our young people and youth were born and raised in that environment, and they would hear bombs and gunshots every day, and they would fear for their lives.
And how are they doing now?
Now, I mean, thank God we have 4 Chaldean churches. We have many young priests here, and we've really brought them in, and we've welcomed them into the community here, and we're doing our best to show them Jesus and, give them the healing that they need from that and allow them to be raised properly. It is hard, though, for the parents that came here not knowing English and having lived in that environment. That's why they rely on the church a lot when it comes to raising their kids in a good environment and with the faith. And so the church has really taken that responsibility here. And so, we have a lot of great programs. And the most important thing is the relationships that we're able to build with these people, to show them that we are there with them and that we can try to help them as best as we can by the grace of God to heal from that and to be able to worship Him as part of this community.
Do Americans assume when they meet Chaldeans, say in the supermarket or something, that they're Muslim?
I think now it's getting much better. Around the time of 9/11, I remember I was just a kid. I remember that was kind of a crazy time where any Middle Eastern person would be seen as a terrorist. But we'd have to explain to people, and we still do have to explain to people, that there are Christians in the Middle East. There are Christians that lived in Iraq. They were there before Muslims. Yeah. And we have such a beautiful heritage of the faith that a lot of people don't really know about. I do like it when they ask, actually, because, I love to be able to teach people that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So have you ever been back to Iraq?
I've been one time, yes, in 2019. Actually, so going back to ISIS took over the city of Mosul in northern Iraq. And so that meant that all of the Christians left. Every single Christian left the huge city of Mosul. We had a eparchy, diocese there. And so there was nobody to minister there. And so then eventually the bishop of Mosul got transferred to another diocese, Australia. And so I went to Iraq when there was a beautiful ceremony when the Chaldean church ordained a new bishop for Mosul after ISIS. And as Christians started to go back there slowly, I don't think there's barely anybody now. There's very, very few people now, I should say. But in 2019, that's when we finally reached a point where the Chaldean church could have another bishop back to Mosul. And so that's when I went there. I actually went to Mosul also for the installation. It was kind of apocalyptic to see.
Like, what did you see?
Oh my gosh, I saw buildings and churches just destroyed. Completely destroyed. I mean,
Ancient churches?
Ancient churches. Very, very ancient churches. There's this one area, and I could send you pictures of this. There's this one area, and I'm sure anybody that lived there knows this area very, very well, but there are 4 churches very in close vicinity to one another. One was a Chaldean church, one was an Assyrian church, and one was a Syriac church. I think I got those right. And another one was another one of the Eastern Rites. And every single church, these beautiful, ancient, for centuries they were there, were completely destroyed. And we went there, and actually Pope Francis went there. There's a picture of him. He was there. This was the city that they said that they wanted to behead him.
Yeah,
you know, and he went there afterwards, and you could just see the picture of the Pope in that area with all of the rubble, and the buildings were just completely destroyed. And he prayed there, and it was just a very moving thing to see. But I also went there, and I saw the destruction. The time I went was a few years after ISIS first invaded and started to take over. And so I saw so many people that had left their villages, and they were slowly going back, and communities were trying to rebuild the villages and the churches there also. There were churches that were
Well, let me ask you about this destruction, if I could. Just the destruction of these 4 churches that you described and these other churches, were these acts of desecration, or is this just war? Like, did they come in and intentionally destroy Catholic churches? Was or Christian churches?
Yeah.
That was the idea?
Yeah. I would walk through, for example, there was a monastery in a village called Batnaya. It's called Mar Oraha. And I saw there were icons on the, stone icons in the walls, and they were desecrated with rocks. The faces, like the faces
destroyed.
of Jesus.
Yeah.
And there was graffiti all over the walls that says property of ISIS. There was a church in the village that my ancestors grew up in, Tilkepe, and I mean, this was so devastating to see that on the altar area there were gunshots because they used that church as their training ground, actually. Mm-hmm. So they just completely took over the church, and they started training there, and so they would shoot on the altar, and it was very, very sad to see.
All right, you go back to Iraq 2019. You're a Catholic priest.
Mm-hmm.
Or weren't you scared to go back?
The only time I was scared, honestly, was when we went to Mosul, because I knew that the ISIS members, they were still there. They're still walking the streets. They're not dressed in their uniform, and they weren't, acting in that evil way in those moments. We did have protection with us, but yeah, it was a little scary going there specifically. But going to Baghdad, and especially Erbil, which is in the north, and the villages, it was actually, especially being in the north, it was the most beautiful experience of my life, actually.
Really?
Seeing the peace there and the ancient churches and communities. I mean, the most beautiful thing was just you go to a village, and every single person there speaks Aramaic. Every single person there is a Chaldean Catholic, and they go to church. We would go to the church, we'd just knock on the door, and we'd have chai, we'd have tea with the priest there. And we would go and we would pray at every church, and we'd visit with the people there. And I went with our Bishop Emmanuel Shalita and another priest, and it was like they welcomed us so much, and it was such a beautiful experience.
Well, how do you get to Mosul then? Like, do you have to fly to Baghdad? Do you
Well, yeah. So Baghdad is more central. We were in Erbil at that time, and we drove about an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to Mosul. Yeah, and our bishop was
but did you dress as a priest?
We did, yeah.
And
we did.
Like, so you're passing places where there's ISIS people.
Oh, yeah.
There's people that would love to see you dead.
Yeah,
and you're not scared until you get to Mosul. Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it is that my bishop, he got another car from a bishop that was there. He just gave us a car to use. And every other priest and bishop and the patriarch also, like, we drove in a whole, like a
caravan.
Caravan. So our bishop was driving, and it was just me, him, and another priest, Father Peter, with us, and there was no security. There was nobody in the car. We're just going with them, though. But it was kind of crazy. Our bishop is very courageous, and it was. very
but
cool
at that
to be a part
moment,
of
you
that.
were thinking, I wish he was a little less courageous, right? You were like,
Right.
because you got to go. You're a priest.
Yeah,
You were,
yeah.
Like, come on, Bishop.
I was just like, kind of just looking around like, okay, you
wow.
know.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't help, Father, and I'm be perfectly honest with you, but I think I'm not alone in this, to feel that we Christians in the West let that community down. Did we?
What do you think? Why do you think you guys did?
We didn't rush to their defense.
Yeah.
We didn't, I think people probably gave money when they took up collections and that kind of thing, but I don't know if we knew what to do.
Yeah.
I think we knew that, maybe we should have. I don't know what we should have done, but it feels like
that's the thing.
We didn't do it doesn't feel like we did enough to protect our brothers and sisters in that moment. We didn't act like brothers and sisters. We act like, oh, that's horrible, but what can I do?
Yeah, I think that is a temptation of, like you mentioned, Christians living in the West. We're, even us, by the way, like we are Chaldeans, and we have to tell our people, like, don't forget about what's going on with our people, our actual cousins and, brothers and sisters that are living out there. So what you're referring to is something that even our Chaldean young people that were born and raised here, that, there are some people that don't really have family back there. And so we have to teach them also, and we have to make them aware of what's going on. But even more so, obviously, to people that are not Chaldean Catholic, it is a big temptation to just completely ignore the other members of the body of Christ, of the church, that are in Iraq, that are in Africa, that are in Lebanon, and other places in the Middle East that are being heavily persecuted, and all throughout the world. But I think now there's a lot more awareness going on, and we definitely need more than awareness. We need to do more, definitely to contribute to the organizations that are there, that are, on site, that are doing a lot. But some organizations did that, and the thing was, I think that we were more let down by the governments, by the governments, by the nations. There was actually never any government funding to protect those people. I'm not exactly sure actually about that statement, but I will say that for the rebuilding of the communities there, it was all charity organizations that helped the communities and the churches actually rebuild. And so that's what happened. And but now a lot of people know about it, and there are organizations that are trying to get the word out.
I think in the United States we think of the years with Saddam Hussein as the head of Iraq as this evil dictator, but then I think people maybe rethought that after what happened with ISIS, was like, well, what does it actually take to protect Christians weren't. Certainly there's something terribly evil about many, many things terribly evil about that, but it's not utter chaos and murder where people are just run out of their homes and tortured and, as I said, crucified and all these things. Yeah. So I don't know, how do people in Iraq feel about that? I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot about that.
No, I could tell you how I felt and how my family, my grandpa, for example, who lived there and actually worked for Saddam's government. And he left because he foresaw the chaos that was going to happen. But one thing I do remember, being a kid, this is like one of my core memories. I remember being a kid, I forgot how old I was exactly, but I remember we were in my grandpa's garage, and we have TVs in our garages. I don't know if...
Is that a Chaldean thing?
Yeah,
yeah.
Sometimes, we make
we put them in our bathrooms.
We have fridges. We have couches.
Okay, so you say hanging out in the garage.
So we're hanging out in the garage, and we're watching the news of basically the fall of Saddam.
Yeah.
I just remember there's a huge statue, and it fell, and the people were, desecrating the statue because the dictator had finally fell. And I just remember thinking that this was such an amazing moment, right? Because the people were going to be free. And I remember looking at my grandpa, and he was very sad. And I said, like, why are you sad? I was so confused about it. And he said something like, we don't know what's going to happen after this. Like, what's going to come after this will be worse.
Yeah,
you know, he knew because there were groups like Al-Qaeda, ISIS that were already there, that were rising up at that time, and that were getting ready for the dictator to fall so that they could go and try to destroy.
Right. So you watch that on TV here in the United States.
Yeah.
Is your family a big family?
Yeah, I only have 2 sisters. One is my twin sister, actually. But I do have a lot of cousins out here. And most of my family is actually here in San Diego. And we've been here, you know, like I said, since the 70s, 80s. And we have some family in Michigan as well, some in Arizona too. There's a lot of Chaldeans out there.
So was it a very religious family?
Very religious family, yes.
Is this common among Chaldeans, though? Like, is this like... Part of my image, maybe, of the Chaldean community is that I like to go to Mass or a festival. So I don't actually know any Chaldean community outside of those things. So it seems to me like this is a very religious community.
It is. Definitely.
Okay. And do you think that's because of the kind of super minority status for, I don't know, give it 1,500 years?
Yeah. That's a good point, because back in Iraq, for example, they used to, you know, they were living among all of the Muslims and, you know, others over there. And so they had to stay together. Yeah. That's the thing. And how did they stay together? It was through the church.
Yeah.
So all of the villages that I went to, I would see the church is kind of in the center of the community, of the village. And so the church was not only the place of worship, but you mentioned festivals and other things that happen within the context of the church. That's also happening here, but it happened originally over there. The church was the gathering place where there's a hall and there's people that, you know.
So it really is the center of the community.
And so that's what happened out here as well.
Right.
Especially the people are leaving, coming to a new country, and so they lived together for the most part. And then a church was established in the places where the people lived. And so then the church also here in America became the center of life for the community. And so my family was raised in that. But my family was very religious, not only because of the church community, but my dad is an ordained deacon also. Okay. And so that's why it was, you know, we had the extra little boost of Catholicism in the home. And so we would pray the rosary together every single day.
Well, wait a second. Is the rosary
yeah.
Is that a Chaldean? Like, would that be
It's a huge devotion.
Really?
Yeah, it's huge devotion in the Chaldean church, as well as like the Stations of the Cross, for example. These are Latin devotions. Like there's a huge devotion to Saint Anthony, to Saint Rita, some of the Latin Rite saints. We do have the Chaldean saints, which we are actually trying to make our people more aware of them. But our people are, you know, still the beautiful things in the Latin Rite. We still love them, and we still use them when, you know, those devotions that help our spirituality. And they kind of show that we're part of this universal Catholic Church too.
Is that because, like, for example, Jesuits came to? Because you have Jesuits there, right?
There were Dominicans, actually.
Oh, Dominicans?
And probably Jesuits too. Yeah.
So that they brought these things with them, or do you think they just naturally kind of migrated in?
Yeah. I mean, I think both, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that they were influenced by that. And
so you grew up praying the rosary?
I grew up praying the rosary every day.
In Arabic? Every day?
And no, actually, we spoke Arabic when I was very little, but then we started speaking English.
Okay.
So we did it in English, and I did know the prayers in Aramaic, and so we would do that as well.
Well, the Our Father, of course,
yes,
is the same prayer.
Yeah.
Do you pray the Hail Mary? Is that even a prayer among Chaldeans, or is there some other prayer?
Yeah,
the Hail Mary is a prayer.
We do pray the Hail Mary, yep.
And then there would be the Glory Be, which you probably say it the right. We say it. It's very weird how we say it in English. I think world without end, amen. That's not how you say for ages unto ages or something.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds better the way you guys
say it.
Exactly. Okay, so you pray the rosary. Your father's a deacon. It's a very faithful, religious family.
Yep.
So you just knew you were going to be a priest from the time you were a child? You had a conversion experience? How do you end up a priest?
So actually, from my very early childhood years, there was a priest here. His name is Father Michael Bazzi, and he was one of the first priests here in San Diego, and the priest that served here the longest, the community out here. And so I just remember being so involved in the community, but I remember asking the question. He was the only priest here. He wasn't, now he's pretty old. I mean, I think he's like 85 or something like that.
Yeah.
But I just remember asking the question, after him, who's going to do it?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, what an interesting way to... I have never heard of someone coming to the priesthood. So you saw the community is going to need a priest.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's when I was a
little kid.
Little kid.
Yeah.
And I just loved being at church, and I was an altar boy as well. I would, go to the catechism classes that we had. And then I started to go to the youth groups and everything. When I became a teenager, it kind of left me a little bit. I was in my teenage years, but that foundation was always there in the back of my mind, and the foundation of the Catholic upbringing that I had of praying the rosary and of being involved in the church community, praying with my family. And then I went to high school, and for a few years I actually went to a very tiny Catholic school. Do you know St. Ephrem? It's a Maronite community.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So they actually had a Catholic school, Maronite Catholic school.
Okay.
Very small school, like literally 20, 30 people in the whole school, and I'm talking K to 12.
Okay.
Okay. So I went there for my freshman year. They had a high school, and the high school was literally me, my sisters, my cousin, and 2 other people.
Okay.
But we used to have daily mass there. It was a very beautiful experience, and then that school had to close down. And then from my freshman year, after doing freshman year there, I went to Steel Canyon High School. So I go from a school of 20, 30 people to a school of about 2,000 people.
Yeah.
20, 30 Catholic people.
To a secular,
to a
public
very secular,
high
yes.
school.
So it was very much culture shock for me. But the thing that got me through it was my Catholic foundation at home, and also the church community that I was going to. I would go to the youth group, for example, and I would have friends there that really helped me in my spiritual life. And it was around that time that the faith was always there for me as a child. Like I said, we would pray the rosary at home. I would go to church and I would learn. So the community aspect of the faith was always there for me. But it wasn't until that time I started going to the youth group that the relationship, the personal aspect of the relationship with Jesus really took form, or started to really develop.
Okay.
And so I would start to read the Bible every day by myself, and it was a beautiful experience. But the thing I did actually before I started to read the Bible, I want to share the story because it's about kind of how my vocation and relationship with Jesus really took form. One day, it was a summer day, and we didn't have Netflix or TikTok or like anything like that back in the day when I was in high school. So my dad used to go to Catholic conferences. He used to go to the Catholic Answers conferences. He used to get a lot of the material and other things. And so one day I was so bored that I ended up going and looking through my dad's books.
See, this is something I don't think parents understand. Boredom is a gift to your child sometimes.
Right.
Let them be bored.
Exactly.
They will discover the most amazing thing if you just let them be bored.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there was nothing for me to do, right? Like I would go and turn on the TV and watch The Price is Right at 10 a.m. and then there's nothing on afterwards. And so I was so bored, I went to go look through my dad's books, and I was just looking around, and I saw a book, True Devotion to Mary by St. Louis de Montfort.
Wow.
Okay. And I just, like every book, I was just looking at the back, just reading what it says. And this says, this is probably the greatest book about Mary ever written. And I was like really shocked about that. I didn't really know a lot about Mother Mary. I would do the rosary since I was a kid, but I didn't really think about it that much, about her role in the Christian life. So that was the first book I ever read by my own choice. Like not a school book. Like I read the whole book.
And how old were you think?
I was probably
15?
14, 15 at that time.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
And so that summer, I read that book, and that book and the devotion to Mary that developed from that book was the greatest thing of my life, actually, because it led me to love Jesus so much. And it led me, I mentioned I was reading the Bible. It led me to reading the scriptures by myself. We would read the Bible at home. Sometimes I would go to church, Bible study, but this was the first time, like I said, my personal relationship with Christ really took effect, because I was reading the Bible every day. I started from the Gospels, and I remember this beautiful time in my life when I didn't know until I read it that Jesus commanded us to do this, but I would do it. I would go to my room and I would close the door after everybody was asleep, and I would just read the scriptures. And I enjoyed that time so much, and I learned so much, and really developed my relationship with the Lord.
What a grace of God that as a really still a child, He called you to that personal connection with Him.
And so that's why my vocation is an early vocation. So right at 17, right when I finished high school, I joined the seminary.
You did. So where does a Chaldean priest go to the seminary?
So that's a good question, because there wasn't anything available actually here. So when I was discerning the priesthood, I remember the Bishop Sarhad Jammu, and the priest who was the vocation director at the time, Father Andy Yonan, they were kind of thinking about what to do, and I was discerning, and there were a couple other guys that were discerning as well. And I remember them thinking about options, maybe sending us there's a major seminary in Los Angeles. And that's what the diocese in Michigan actually does. The Chaldean eparchy there, they send their seminarians. There's a local seminary, Sacred Heart Seminary. So they send their seminarians to Sacred Heart Seminary, but they also have a connection to the Chaldean Church as well throughout their seminary years.
That's quite a good seminary, that Sacred Heart Seminary.
Yeah, it is. Father Andy went there too. He lived in Michigan. But there's no local major seminary here, so if they were going to send us to LA or somewhere
Menlo
else,
Park or something, those are the ones out here. Yeah,
we weren't going to be formed in the Chaldean liturgy very well and within the Chaldean community very well. So the bishop, who was the first bishop of this diocese, actually, because before, it was a very gradual thing of how the dioceses were erected throughout the diaspora of the Chaldean Church. First, it was only just a missionary territory in America. Then it became a diocese for all of America. Yeah, there was one bishop, and then they split it. So there's Eastern United States, that's its own diocese now, and then there was Western. That was in 2002. They brought Bishop Sedhead, they ordained him, and he became the first bishop of this diocese. I'm just going to say diocese now.
Well,
because we usually call it eparchy.
Yeah, but it's the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So he thought that it was best to start his own seminary. And so he went through the full approval process and everything of the canon law and with the Synod of the Chaldean Church, which is, by the way, not like how Latin Catholics would view a synod. A Chaldean synod
We don't know what a synod is. Like you say how Latin Catholics, ask any Latin Catholic, what's a synod? I don't know. It's something. It's some kind of meeting. So what's a synod
for us? It's the governing body of the Chaldean Church.
Wait. Now you have a patriarch.
Yes.
Okay, so the patriarch is like he's the top guy? Or I know he's not the Pope.
He's not the Pope. I know you're going to say like the Pope, but he is the...
Is he the legislator?
He's the head of the Chaldean Church.
Okay.
But he's under the authority of the Pope.
Right.
So the patriarch and the synod, who are the bishops, they are the heads of the Chaldean Church.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this synod has to meet regularly.
So the synod meets regularly. It's about to meet in a couple of weeks now. Once a year they meet. All of the bishops.
And how many? Do you have any idea how many bishops that is?
Probably about 20.
20 bishops. Yeah. And they all go where?
And they all go usually to Iraq. Sometimes it's been in Rome. Now it's going to be in Baghdad. And they meet and they legislate for the Chaldean Church, and they pick new bishops. And, like I said, this is the governing body of the church. And so to start a seminary, you need the approval of the synod, So the bishop went through all of that, and he started a seminary here in San Diego. This is the first and as of now, still the only Chaldean Rite seminary outside of Iraq here in San Diego.
Is part of the reason that they're able to do that because I know that Iraqi Christians are very highly educated people. Mm-hmm. So you have probably highly educated people who had to leave Iraq.
Yes.
And so that they could come here and kind of be reconstituted as a seminary?
Yes, exactly. However, when people think of seminary, maybe they'll think of something like, what's the one in LA called? St. John?
Is it St. John?
St. John in Camarillo, I think.
Oh, St. John. Yeah, Camarillo. Yeah.
And then Sacred Heart, or there's one in St. Louis, a huge major seminary. But it doesn't have to be that way, according to the law of the church. Our seminary was just a house near the church, and we had a priest, sometimes two priests, the one priest as the rector of the seminary living with us, and, sometimes another priest would live there to help with other things. But we received our education, or as the church would call it, intellectual formation, from a Catholic university. Okay. So we would go to JP Catholic, John Paul the Great Catholic University, for our undergrad. And at the time, they had a master's in theology. So that's what I received.
So you've been in class with Michael Barber then?
Yes, okay. For sure.
He's not there anymore.
He's not there. So actually, they started the Augustin Institute. Not JP Catholic started, but Tim Gray and them started the Augustin Institute, and they offered the master's in theology online with some intensives and things on the campus. So now our seminarians actually go to the Augustin Institute and they get their degree, all while living at the seminary and being formed in the Chaldean liturgy and traditions, praying what we call Ramsha and Sapra, evening prayer, morning prayer. It's like Vespers and Lauds, praying that with the community as well.
With the every day. What's the community? Of lay people or?
Of lay people as well. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So there are some prayers that are done at the seminary.
Yeah.
But there are also prayers that the seminarians do with the priests and bishops in the church community as well.
Wow.
And so basically for me, being formed in that environment and living with who are now my brother priests, they were seminarians at the time, and Father Andy as well, and learning about the Chaldean heritage, the Chaldean language, the Chaldean church fathers, and the Chaldean liturgy, all while also studying theology at a very, very high level, right? So it was a very beautiful experience for me during my seminary time to be formed as a Chaldean Catholic priest, and so then I was ordained a priest. We kind of had to, the bishop has some dispensing power. So he did make a dispensation for me to ordain me at 23 years old. Because the Latin Rite, the minimum age is 25. For Eastern Rite, it's 24 is the minimum age to be ordained a priest. But he can dispense a little bit.
You're so mature at 23. He'll take you.
So yeah, that's when I was ordained.
Well, you received the call early, though.
Yeah.
And okay. And all of this, you in your scheming mind, you were like, what I'm going to do with this is become an internet sensation. I'm going to, because that's what you do now. Well, you have a parish life.
Yes.
But you also have this other life online.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? What happened?
So when that internet sensation stuff happened, I was the parochial vicar, so an assistant priest at our church here that I'm now the pastor of, St. Michael's Church. And it was actually, I always had social media, and I would always try to use it as a form of evangelization whenever I could. I would post Bible verses, stuff like that. And it wasn't until the COVID lockdown time when I started to think about how to reach my community better and how to reach people that were not going to church better. And I was trying to think about ways of doing it. And I just remember one time I was having a conversation with my little cousin. She was like 12, 13 years old at the time. And she showed me a video of I don't know, it was a Protestant pastor or somebody doing a message on TikTok.
Oh, this was your first exposure to TikTok?
This was my first exposure. Okay. Well, I had previous exposure to it as an app which was like music and dancing, because it used to be called Musical.ly, actually. And my cousin kind of explained it all to me. And I asked her, I said, wait, are there videos like this on TikTok? And she said, there's everything on TikTok. And I thought it was only the music and dancing stuff, right?
Not a Chaldean priest. There's everything else, but
everything else, not even Chaldean priest, actually.
Really?
There were, now there's a good amount of Catholic priests, thank God, on the app, but I barely saw any Catholic priests on the app. And so I decided to just give it a try. I said, I mean, what's the worst that can happen, you know? So I gave it a try, and all of a sudden the video started blowing up because of TikTok's algorithm, where, you know, I didn't have many followers who, you know, followed my account at the time, but TikTok's algorithm has this thing. Are you familiar with it at all or no? There's the For You page.
Oh, just
Kind of.
explain it.
Okay,
Just, you know what? I am very familiar with it, Father, but for the audience,
Okay,
explain
sure,
it.
sure.
Yeah.
So the For You page is a separate stream or like page where you see a bunch of content, let's just say. And it's not necessarily the people that you follow. It's the people that the algorithm gives you based on likes, based on comments, based on, you know, how the video is doing. And so your video has the potential to reach literally millions of people. Like even if you have 50 followers, has the potential on the app. And so that would happen pretty often. Not millions, that did happen sometimes, but thousands
all of a sudden,
and thousands. All of a sudden, I'd be making videos, answering questions with these little 1-minute snippets. And then I started to do other things on the app, like just eat food.
Food reviews.
Yeah.
Chicken sandwich reviews.
We spoke about that last time, yeah. And so it kind of just blew up. And then I started to use Instagram more and to post Bible studies on there, to post prayers. I actually do the rosary almost every day live on there. And I started that from the COVID time.
You can do the rosary on TikTok?
Yeah.
I thought it was short.
TikTok live. Yeah.
Oh.
Live. TikTok now allows you to do a 10-minute video, but Instagram is where I post the rosary videos, and I do it live almost every day on there, and a lot of people join me and they pray with me. Yeah.
Wow. So how much time are you devoting to online ministry now?
So I'm not devoting as much time as I was when it really blew up and everything around the COVID time, because we didn't really have a lot of church activities at that time as well. And I was a parochial vicar. I was an assistant priest. And so now I'm a pastor of the church community. And so the pastoral work that I have physically at my church comes first, right? And so the social media stuff, if I have time for it, I will do it. But the pastoral ministry, which is very demanding at times, in a very fruitful and beautiful way, that takes precedent for me. And so,
of course, yeah.
So I have to focus on that.
So, tell me about the life of a Chaldean priest. Then, first of all, are there differences in the seven? I mean, I know that.
Sure.
I know this at least. There's no difference in the essence of the seven sacraments,
Mm-hmm.
but are there accidental differences, so to speak,
Yes.
in the celebration of the seven sacraments, and what are they like?
So the first one I would say is that we receive confirmation as babies.
As God intended.
Yes. You should be a Chaldean Catholic, man.
No,
I'm just joking.
Maybe, but I mean, I love the Chaldean Catholics, but I do think this is one that the Latin Rite has had wrong for a long time. But that's just a personal opinion.
Yeah. Other Eastern rites as well. And I will say that I definitely agree with you.
Yeah.
So we receive baptism and confirmation. Traditionally, I mean, in the Church of the East, which is our church now, it's kind of split into different churches. Like there's the Chaldean Catholic Church, there's the Assyrian Church of the East.
Which, I'll tell you what, let's get, I want to come back to that because I want you to explain that, but let's do the sacraments. Okay.
So I was going to say that traditionally in the Church of the East, which I'll explain later, we used to also receive Eucharist at that time.
As an infant.
As babies. And the Assyrian Church still does that.
Okay.
So they still receive it. I think the priest will take a little bit of the blood of Christ and just dip it on the child's tongue, right? So, but what are these called? Even Latin Catholics know they're called sacraments of initiation. So we are being initiated into the body of Christ and receiving the fullness of grace, which is the Eucharist, right? Baptism, confirmation, and the Eucharist. Another thing I would say is that I know that not all Latin weddings have a mass, but I think most of them do. Is that right to say?
Well, yeah, but like, for example, if a Latin Rite Catholic marries a non-Catholic, then they probably won't have a mass. I don't know what the canon law is on it.
Okay, yeah. So we don't have mass actually part of our marriage liturgy at all.
It's just the
liturgical rite of the sacrament of matrimony. And I think everything else pretty much about the sacraments
is about the same.
So
when does a child receive First Communion in your church?
So our children receive it at the age of reason.
Okay.
That's when we, age 2nd or 3rd grade.
And for Latin Rite Catholics, that's because of Pope Pius X. Does the Pope, do you know, was it Pope Pius X who just decreed that for everybody? Like everybody receive it at the age of reason now? Or
it doesn't really apply to us, actually.
Because you're what is it called? You're a separate jurisdiction.
Yeah.
You have a different law than we have.
And a different rite, RITE, of the church. And so that would be something that the Patriarch and the Synod would have jurisdiction over. Everything else except for the text of the Mass, like the Patriarch and the Synod cannot change anything that they want about the Mass without the approval of the Vatican.
I see.
Of the Pope.
See. Yeah.
Yeah. And the text of the liturgy itself have to go through that process.
Well, I do want to talk to you about Assyrian rite and Chaldean rite, and all of that is connected, I believe, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, to the rise of Islam. It meant that there was a separation between, say, Baghdad and Rome that was really uncrossable for quite a few centuries. I don't know how many centuries, but for quite maybe 10 centuries or 11 or 12.
Yeah, and honestly, that's why our church is seen as not being part of the Catholic Church for part of its history.
Yeah.
However, liturgically and ecclesiastically and with our thoughts and with our heritage and everything and the traditions of our church, we never made any public form of separation from the church or said that we're separate from the Pope of Rome.
No, it's just that you were.
It's just that we were
practically
far.
separate.
Yeah. We were far, and there was no communication.
Yeah.
Right, but we were one church throughout all of our history.
But not Assyrians.
Assyrians, they were part of our church as well, actually.
Okay, so tell me what happened there. Explain the difference between an Assyrian, because you're all Iraqis.
Yeah.
You're all sons and daughters of Abraham, right? You come from the same place that Abraham came from.
Yes.
So why are there Assyrian Christians? Am I even saying that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then Chaldean Catholics.
Yeah, so it was one church at some point. So first of all, it's basically the same people, but different dialects, different villages that we lived in, and we were called different names throughout history. So there is the Chaldean people and there's the Assyrian people.
Right.
We're so unified in our traditions and in our heritage and in our language as well. There are just different dialects and different villages, like I said. And the churches were united as well, but there was a split in the 1500s where the Chaldean people and the Chaldean church ended up with the Catholic Church. And the Assyrians are now there. It's called the Assyrian Church of the East.
Okay.
They have a couple different factions in their church as well, but the majority of them are part of the Assyrian Church of the East, which is not technically Orthodox, but it's very similar to how Orthodox would be. Like, we consider their Mass, their Eucharist to be valid Eucharist, and their sacraments as well, and their priesthood as well, right?
But their bishops are not under the authority of the Pope.
No, they're not under so they have another patriarch. His name is Mar Awa, who we've
Mar
met.
means what, like sir or lord?
It means father, actually.
Oh, it means father. Okay.
It's just there's a weird debate about whether the B should be pronounced or not.
But
anyways.
you call saints Mar, right?
Yes.
And you call bishops Mar
as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like Lord or something.
Yeah.
So they have a patriarch, Mar Awa, who we know very well. Every time he comes here, we welcome him at our church.
Oh, you do?
And we sing hymns and we pray together. It's a very beautiful thing, actually. And so they have their patriarch and their bishops, but they're not under the authority of the Pope. Hopefully one day, God willing.
Is there any movement in that regard, or?
Not any serious movement right now, I think.
Okay,
but there have been times.
I'm a Chaldean Catholic, and then there's the Assyrian, and the rites are basically the same. The theology is basically the same. Is this a situation where it's like in one family there might be some of one and some of the other? It is?
Yeah, intermarrying a lot.
So at the popular level, not at the level of theology or government or anything, but just at the popular level, do people tend to kind of blend it all together? They do?
Big time, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially in places where there are more Assyrians, for example, and where there are Chaldeans, like Chicago, Michigan, Arizona. There's a lot of blending there.
So what's the law of your right? Can a Chaldean go to Mass at the Assyrian, or only in a grave necessity, or do you know?
It would be the same thing as the law for a Catholic going to Orthodox Mass, only in a grave necessity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So your patriarch is also thought of as a cardinal? Like, is he?
He became a cardinal. So
so he has to be made a cardinal. It's not automatic.
Yeah. Not all patriarchs are necessarily cardinals.
Okay.
I think I want to say our previous patriarch, Mar Emmanuel Delli, I want to say he was the first Chaldean patriarch to be made a cardinal.
Okay.
And then our next patriarch now, Cardinal Patriarch Luis Sacco, he's also obviously a cardinal. It would be interesting to see if maybe one day we have a Chaldean pope. I mean,
but we could.
Technically, it's possible.
Yeah. Right. But what about at the Second Vatican Council or the First Vatican Council? Did Chaldeans participate in those?
They did participate. Our
bishops
patriarch.
did.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And like, what's the relationship like with the Latin Rite then? Mm-hmm. Like, is it? So, are there frustrations? I mean, problems, that kind of thing?
No. We actually, let's just say here in San Diego, we work very well with the Latin Rite, especially with the tribunal, for example, and the priests and bishops.
Why tribunal? What's to settle marriage cases? Or?
Yeah, marriage cases, annulments. Oh. So we work with them. Like for so many years, it was just the Latin tribunal that would handle our annulment cases. But now we have one of our Chaldean priests is a judge in the tribunal.
Here.
I'm also here.
Okay.
Myself and two other priests are canon lawyers now. I'm almost done with my degree. We studied at the Catholic University of America, and so we're also going to be working with that. But my point is that we work very well together with the Latin Church. But a lot of people think, like, if the Latin bishop makes a statement or says something, Diocese of San Diego, they think it applies to us. It has nothing to do with us, actually.
Right.
We have our own bishop here, and he's the bishop not only of San Diego, but of the whole Western United States for Chaldean Catholics.
So he's dealing with a lot of Latin Rite bishops. Like, he's got to deal with the Archbishop of LA
whenever something happens,
San Francisco.
Yeah, and he'll go to their major events. Our bishop, definitely tries to go and visit all of the parishes in our diocese a lot, and make his presence known among the people. We have a lot of smaller communities.
What about this big? We have the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops.
Doesn't even go.
He doesn't go.
He could go.
Boy, that's what the rest of them would like to do, I think. But
I know.
He doesn't go.
Because he's gone
because that's for Latin Rite bishops.
He's gone before. There are Eastern bishops that go and that participate, and from my understanding, they do have a role, a very limited role, but for most of the things that they vote on at the USCCB, it has nothing to do with Eastern Rite bishops. So I think our bishop has gone a couple of times, and he said, he'd rather be visiting a parish that is outside of San Diego or something like that within our diocese. Yeah. So
there are a large number of Middle Eastern people who are not Chaldeans here as well. I mean, as you said, we have the Maronite Catholics, so we have Syriac Catholics here, I think. But there are a lot of Muslims here as well. Is there any relationship, or is that?
Just on people's personal levels, if they have, but not really within the communities, right? I mean, there is a community, and it's not really Muslim anymore, but it's a Kurdish community. So Kurdistan, it's like northern Iraq area. So there's a Kurdish community here. There's a pastor who is a former Kurd, and he converted. He's not Catholic yet. Hopefully he will become. But he has a community of Kurdish people that he evangelizes to. And I think he's, if not already, translated the Bible to Kurdish, right?
Wow.
At least the Gospels now. And so we do have some interactions with with them as well. And it kind of reminds the people here of back home in Iraq, seeing Muslims and having interactions with them. And for sure, even in Iraq, there was a lot of conversions of Muslims to Catholicism, but it was very hard for them to actually live their faith publicly. It was actually against the law for that to happen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. A lot of them, they converted there, and then they came here, and then they started practicing their faith.
This is something this is, I guess, kind of common in that part of the world, but that you can't convert. Is that? I guess
pretty crazy, right?
Well, it seems crazy to us, but I guess
because we have the freedom.
But that's just probably the way it's been it's a great, I guess, a serious sin in Islam to convert.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we hear in many places it's punishable by death.
Yes, it is.
So I can see why you would keep that under your hat.
Uh-huh.
Well, what do you think attracts Muslims to Christianity when they do come?
A lot, but starting with understanding who Jesus is. That
Okay.
Jesus is, when they really understand who he is, that he's not just a prophet, right? He doesn't
Right.
just speak on behalf of God. But once they understand that he is actually the divine Son of God, once they make it so that they don't have to completely grasp everything at one point in their human understanding, but they, expand their minds to the deep mysteries of the faith, then they realize and they understand who Jesus is. And also Mary, by the way, is a great connection between Islam and Christianity.
Because they have reverence for Mary.
A lot of Muslims back home in Iraq, they would even go and they would, pray at statues of Mary. Even here, actually, at
Really?
St. Michael Church, we have a beautiful shrine to Mother Mary, and we see Muslims sometimes coming there to pray. And so I think that there's a lot, obviously, to attract them to the faith. But once they start understanding it and they delve deep and once they read the Gospels and they really focus on that and they don't believe the lie that the Gospels are fake and stuff like that, and they read the Gospels with an open mind, that's what gets them.
Yeah. If that's God, then well, first of all, I think even many modern people don't understand this. But if you come to the moment where you go, that's God, that is really good news.
Yes.
Everything is suddenly everything is in a completely new context. If that's God, then my whole life means something so much more than I thought it was.
Exactly.
Even if you said that's a prophet, it wouldn't be the same as saying that's when you understand incarnation, or even have a glimpse of the incarnation. Like you said, not an intellectual understanding, but a grasp of this person is God. There's nothing bad about it. It's just overwhelmingly good news.
Yes, exactly. And so a lot of people have had that revelation and that experience, and so they have come to Christ, and it is through the preaching of a lot of Chaldean priests back home in Iraq, here as well. I've actually baptized multiple Muslims too, and so it is a beautiful thing to see someone be welcomed into the church. And one thing about people like that versus cradle Catholics, right, is that they have such a passion and a love for Jesus.
Yeah.
I know that cradle Catholics do as well, but these people have such a beautiful expression of their faith because they're just being welcomed into it, and they're just learning, and they just want to learn more and more so that they can be able to live the faith out as best as they can.
So it's interesting to me, though, that you've, Jesus became personal in your life at a very young age, and that I'm sure that you're a wonderful person, but that's the grace of God. I mean, that he came to you personally at such a young age in such a lasting way. So is that at the essence what the social media stuff is about? Is that you want to bring other people to that understanding of the incarnation?
Yeah.
So they can have that?
Yes. And that was before the social media stuff. That's kind of how it started for me with my missionary work, not going out to different missions, but just here locally, doing things that were out of my comfort zone to try to get the gospel message to people. One thing, for example, was when I was in high school, a friend's a group of friends and we started a group, we call it Youth for Truth. And it's a club at public high school where we would gather together once a week during lunchtime, and we would pray together and talk about Jesus and the Bible. And so I started that when I was in high school. And thank God, the fruit of that is that now that was just that one high school, and I had, very few people would come. But now we have about 6 high schools that we Chaldean priests, we actually go to public high schools where our Chaldean students are. And once a week, we gather for lunch. And at one school, we have over 100 kids that come during lunchtime. And we have very generous donors that, give us pizza. So we take them pizza during lunch, and we do a short Bible study for them. So that was something that I did early on that really inspired me to keep on doing it and to keep on teaching people and to keep on trying to bring the message of Jesus to people of this world.
So do other kids come?
Other kids come. It's a public school, right? And so it has to be. And so we do get some Muslims and atheists. They come in, and sometimes they come just for pizza, but we make them, like, if you're going to get pizza, you have to sit through the Bible study first. That's what we say. So they sometimes come in just for that, and then they sometimes come afterwards and they ask us questions. I had a kid the other day that was telling me that he's not Catholic. I forgot what he was, but he was interested in, he was not even Christian, and he wanted to become baptized. And he was asking me how, and I was almost gonna do the thing that Philip did to the
there's some water
to the eunuch. There's a sink right there. Like literally, I literally looked at the sink. I was like, man, do I have to go through this process right now?
Isn't that something though, as a priest, because we have these laws that you got to follow. Mm-hmm. But the desire is, if the person wants baptism and they know what they're asking for, you just want to baptize them.
Yeah. And that's one of the great things that I looked forward to as a priest that I really love now is the access to the sacraments. That like if I were to do the baptism there, it would have been a valid baptism.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But the access to confession that I am able to give people.
Yeah.
I remember being in my early years and trying to evangelize and bring the gospel to people, and I would form relationships with people, and we'd talk about confession, and this person, for example, hadn't been to confession in many, many years, and then they would say that they're down to go to confession, and then it was hard to find a priest that, at that moment. So I was like, dude, I can't wait until okay, let's just do it now,
And you can now.
And now I can, and it's a very beautiful thing.
Yeah, what's it like to hear confession?
Ooh, hearing confessions... At first, it was very overwhelming. It was very overwhelming and very tough to do until I started to adjust. And I knew, hearing from the experiences of other priests, I knew the challenging aspect of this, the fact that you're going to hear some crazy stuff and you're going to have to be so united to Jesus that it's not going to even affect you at all. And thank God I've, pretty much gotten to that point where I have a very strong prayer life. And my relationship with Jesus is very strong by his grace. And so confessions is just a wonderful, amazing thing now for me, where I just get to experience a person coming back to Jesus, and receiving his grace and mercy, and me being an instrument of that. I'm not worthy of that, and I even get kind of emotional thinking about it. But it's a very, very beautiful thing just to be the instrument of Jesus for those people. And so I just try my best to just, hear their sins and to just give them that grace and that mercy and the encouragement that they need to go back. I just actually read a quote from Pope Benedict where he talked about that we clean our rooms and our houses and our bodies, and it's a lot of the time it's the same dirt. People they get discouraged when it's the same sin, but it's the same smell. I go and that I clean every single time. I don't go and purposely try to get dirty, right? But if I do get dirty, I'm gonna go clean. I'm gonna clean my car. I'm gonna clean my house constantly, and so that's helping people do that. And a lot of time you see people, they're extremely nervous. And I just try to just be compassionate and be loving and be merciful for them, because it seems like they're scared of something. I don't know exactly what it is all the time, but I don't want them to be scared of Jesus. I want them to see Jesus for the merciful Lord that He is.
Yeah. Yeah, and you have to go to confession.
I do, yes, yes.
So
I
you
just
have
went a
that
couple
side of
days
it.
ago. Yes, it's very cool having priests that I went to seminary with and that I'm so close with, and so it's kind of funny. A lot of the time when I ask one of them for confession, after he's done absolving me, he'll be like, "Can I go to confession too?" And so we'll just kind of trade off.
Oh, that's No priest ever says that to me. They usually go,
if you're
I
Chaldean,
need a break. I need a break.
If you become Chaldean, by the way, you could be a married priest possibly. We have married priests.
This is the second time you're trying to get me to be Chaldean. I feel pretty good about that. I feel like you're recruiting me, and I feel like that means I have some. I might bring some value.
Yes.
Well, I'm worried about the Chaldean community, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay, please.
Every immigrant community eventually enculturates, and maybe the kids, you're the kid, they're Catholic and they're fully Christian, and maybe the grandkids, but maybe a little less so, or maybe they're not living quite so close to the community and they start to have other attachments. The great-grandkids, I don't know if they're going to come to Mass. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now, this is not my worry. I know it's all in Jesus' hands.
Yeah.
But it's got to be something that as a minister of that church, as a priest of that church, that you think about.
Definitely. And, it's not only me, but it's the church, all the church hierarchy thinks about this, and especially for the communities. I mean, this is now the first time in the Chaldean church's history where the majority of Chaldean people are outside of Iraq right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So majority are outside. And I think one thing is for sure, unfortunately, at some point, I shouldn't say for sure, I think most likely the language is going to die out. Okay.
Yeah.
So
okay. That's right. Yeah.
Like me, for example, right? Like my parents came in the 80s. They started to speak English, and we spoke English at home. And so I learned Chaldean, Aramaic from the seminary, right? So in future generations, that's going to be happening more and more, where the language is going to die out. The church, we are trying definitely to teach Aramaic to the youth and encouraging people to speak it more at home. And I do see a lot of families doing that. So that might happen. Hopefully it doesn't. But one thing that's in the church's control more than the language is the faith of the church communities and of the people. And honestly, thank God that the seminary started at the time it did, and that I joined the seminary and other young men joined. And in Michigan, by the way, too, there's many young Chaldean priests that have such a passion and love for the Lord. And you should see, go to a Chaldean Mass anywhere, especially the ones that are English-speaking, full, absolutely full. And it's so beautiful to see the youth groups and the catechism classes. Right. And, I have a group of kids at my church, like 50 to 60 kids, that a majority of them come to daily Mass to serve. They're altar servers. And we pray evening prayer and morning prayer from the Chaldean liturgy. And it's such a beautiful thing to see. And I think it's the fruit of us young priests that are learning the Chaldean heritage and the Chaldean liturgy. And these prayers have been translated. Father Andy is one of the main ones that actually translated a lot of the old Chaldean prayers. It's like from the breviary, for example, we have something called the Hudra, which is the Chaldean prayer book.
Okay.
And a lot of it has been translated, and beautiful prayers and melodies as well that we sing. So I think you are right to have that concern, and we do have that concern, but we are definitely trying our best to avoid that, so that in the future we would have built a strong foundation for the church here for many, many generations, so that they can live their Chaldean Catholic faith.
When you said about the Iraqi Christians, there's more of them outside of Iraq than in Iraq. God often, he does that trick of the catastrophe becomes the blessing and we don't know how he does that trick, but I think about like the fall of Constantinople. It's a great disaster for the church, but it also becomes this great gift for the church because all these scholars from the East come into Italy and France and Germany. And the Chaldean church really is a gift where it goes right now. I mean, it's a tremendous gift to San Diego that we have these Chaldean people in these Chaldean parishes. It'd be fascinating to see how that gift is received. I mean, do you treat everybody like this? Do you try to get them in? You're recruiting?
Not
people?
Everybody. No,
I'm special.
You're very valuable. Yeah. We could use you.
I can't do languages at all, so don't forget
it.
We
have a lot of English speakers.
Yeah.
A lot of English speakers.
I've noticed that.
No, but honestly though, the Catholic Church encourages everybody to stay in their right.
Yeah, sure.
And this is one thing that we try to encourage and tell Chaldean people once they come here, like maybe they don't know, or maybe they live in an area where there's not a Chaldean church. Well, like that's another story, but sometimes they'll live in an area where there is a Chaldean church and they won't go to a Chaldean church. You can go validly, you can go to a Latin Rite Mass, but you can't do your wedding there, for example, right? You can't get baptized there unless the Chaldean church gives a dispensation for that, right? So we encourage people definitely because this is what the Catholic Church encourages. Pope John Paul II wrote this beautiful encyclical Orientale Lumen, the light of the East. And he really encourages, especially Eastern Christians, to stick to their roots and to bring those out and to teach other people about it. And so, yes, we did mention the Rosary. And the Rosary is a big part of my life from childhood till now. But the most important part of my formation, especially as a Chaldean Catholic priest and as just a Chaldean Catholic, was to learn about the beautiful Chaldean heritage, like liturgical and patristic heritage. And I was so inspired by the way that our church fathers would speak, and their way of expressing the faith really taught me, and it really, felt at home to me too. This is my ancestors. And so teaching people that, for example, like one thing I would say is that if you are a Chaldean and you want to pray the prayer of the church, like don't pray Vespers, pray the Chaldean evening prayer, because we have a beautiful Chaldean evening prayer. Just the other day, I was at St. Michael's Abbey in Orange County, and I went to Vespers. I was with my church choir, and we were visiting there, and I went to their Vespers. It was such a beautiful thing, right? But we have our own liturgical prayers that we pray. And so to try to teach people that, I think it's very important, especially for the future of our church.
Well, I have to say, I have this experience around Chaldeans, and I think part of the reason like American Latin Rite Catholics are attracted to, there's just something where we want to experience Chaldean liturgy. We want to sometimes just to hear from Chaldean people, because in kind of almost physical ways, you're more connected to the land where all this happened than we are. Like you come from the Fertile Crescent. You come from the place where all these stories we've been hearing for thousands of years, those are your stories more than ours. And I can remember the first time I went to Mass at what was the first parish here? St. Michael's?
St. Peter's.
St. Peter's, yeah. And someone's told me they're when they pray the Eucharistic prayer, it's going to be in Aramaic. And that means you'll hear the words that Jesus said. Not just the words that Jesus said, but the sounds that Jesus made. And I remember just crying when I heard that. Like there's a kind of visceral connection that it's just so beautiful that we haven't lost that exists somewhere in the world. If somebody says the words that Jesus said in the way that Jesus said. I mean, I know it's not exactly the same, but and I don't want to just say that that's, like I don't want to reduce the Chaldean community to that, but that really is a gift to be able to go somewhere and experience that.
Yeah, definitely. And this is just one of the beautiful things of the Catholic Church, is that the Catholic Universal Church has these beautiful aspects to it. And so that's why I encourage Chaldean people, like, keep the language, learn the language, keep the Chaldean liturgy, because of reactions like yours. And not only that, I mean, we do it, yes, we want to show you and the Latin Catholics and the whole world the beauties of the Chaldean liturgy and the church, but mostly for ourselves, right? Like, I want them to experience that and to know it and to really live by it so that they can be formed according to that, because it has produced saints and many martyrs. This is called, our Church of the East, it was called the Church of the Martyrs because of all of the martyrs that it produced. And so there's a beautiful heritage and liturgy of that sacrificial offering to God that's biblical and that has been lived out by the church and that is still being lived out nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. I remember thinking, to me, Nineveh, that's a place in the Bible. It's an ancient city in the Bible. To you, that's like where your cousin came from.
Backyard, literally.
Like, it's so weird to me. Even now, it's just, it's like, but I would like, before we end, to talk to you about Jesus a little bit more, because Jesus is the center of your life. First of all, how do you say the name of Jesus?
Yeshua.
Yeshua?
Yeshua, yeah. Or like,
I said Yeshua, the same thing you said. Don't you correct me? I said the same thing you said.
I don't know. I think our people can.
So, like when Mary called him, what would she have said?
Yeah, Yeshua. And I should say, there's at the end is another letter that is not in the English alphabet. It's a
letter down here?
Yeah, down here.
We don't have letters down here.
That's why it sounded, maybe to them it'll sound the same.
But to you,
but to me it didn't, yeah.
So that's his name.
Yes.
And that's what Mary would have called him.
Yes.
And it's the same Jesus that, was with you when you found St. Louis de Montfort. Mm-hmm. And somehow, for some reason, the world decided it didn't believe in the incarnation anymore. Mm-hmm. And how are we going to, you have pizza days at public schools, you're a pastor, you have the internet ministry. How are we going to call the world back to the incarnation of God in Jesus Christ?
I think, honestly, the first thing that comes to my mind is the thing that we kind of started talking about, and that started it all for me, was the prayer at home.
Okay.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time, Catholics, they have a great passion to spread and to evangelize, and we need these great ministries like Catholic Answers and internet warriors to go and to teach people. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is starting at home, where the father and the mother live out their natural priesthood, and they bless their children by their actions and by their prayers and by their teachings. And they start to teach them at home and to make sure that they have that authority over their children, and so that they be sanctified and not only try to go and sanctify others, which is very hard to do, especially for most lay people. But most lay people have the opportunity to go and to sanctify themselves, first of all, by the grace of Jesus, and then to start it at home. To not let kids, for example, go and only learn things from school or from social media. Go and see what your kids are learning. Have a relationship with them. That's what it's ultimately about. It's about relationship with God. We have to be the bridge to that. We have to lead people to Jesus. And the best way is to have relationships with them, good, holy relationships, and to pray with them and to teach them. And I think it starts from the home.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
That's not as, that is something we can do. I guess, we have to maybe stop thinking that we have to do great things, because the times seem so horrific in some ways. You almost feel like, you need some dramatic thing.
Yeah.
But that's really not how the gospel works.
Yeah. You know how Jesus says the gospel works time and time again? Like a seed.
Yeah.
Plant the seed. Watering every day. That's how it's going to work. He said, the people said, we did many mighty works in your name. And he said, get behind, like, I never knew you.
I never knew you. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's not only the mighty works that we can do, but it's the seed, and it's the daily watering, the daily nourishment, clearing our soil, making sure the soil has no rocks and no thorns, doing that for our kids as well, right? Yeah. Teaching the kids the importance of the relationship with Jesus, and forming them and feeding them, nourishing them. I think a lot of fathers and mothers have great intentions, and they work so hard, especially Chaldean parents and especially fathers work extremely hard, but sometimes they forget about the fact you don't only feed them physical food. You can't only give them a roof, but you have to feed them spiritual.
Food you got to give them, right? Yeah. You got to till that seed.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Father, I'm going to ask you if you will give us your blessing. You can do it in Aramaic, the language of Jesus.
Sure.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know the responses. I can't help you with any of that. So
just say amen.
Oh, I can do amen. Yes. Does it have any extra letters in it that I need to know?
No, actually not amen.
Okay.
And I'll say the words that we usually say for a blessing, which is the blessing and greeting of St. Paul, by the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. May the grace. So I'll say that now. طيبوثة مارني شو عمشيحة حبدا لها بابا شركوت دروحات قدش هويا موخن بصلوات مات مريم ومار يوسف وكل قديشة دهو بكل زونة بابا وبرونا وروحات قدش العالمين. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you all. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, what a great time. I just enjoyed it so much. And just tell them where they can find you then.
Sure.
Where are you? Not YouTube, but...
Actually, we are on YouTube now. Our diocese is starting a new YouTube and media initiative called Qurbana Media. Do you know what the word Qurbana means, by the way?
No.
Qurbana means Eucharist. Or offering, yeah.
It sounds like the thing Jesus says when you call it Korban.
Yes, that's
it is
it.
like that.
That is it. Exactly, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reserved or set aside or something like
that? Yeah. And like offered, right?
Oh,
so
offered.
It's part of the sacrifice.
So Qurbana Media.
Qurbana Media is a new media company that we started. Basically, it's us, and we have a lot of cool projects. We have a show called Feeding Fathers, where we feed people spiritually, but we also get fed good food.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
So and
if you need a host, I'm looking for another job. So no, I like it here. I'm all right here.
Yeah, you're doing a great job here. And I'm on TikTok, Instagram. You could just look up Father Simon. Beware of the fake accounts, though. There's some fake accounts out there, but
I'm the old guy that finds the fake accounts. I think I've been watching.
You'll be like messaging.
I'll be messaging.
Then they ask you for money, and they say, "Oh, I have 4 people." Then you donate to them.
Actually, Father, you're kind of telling my story. Father Simon, say your last name for me.
Esshaki.
Esshaki.
Yes.
Why do I want to say Esshaki? Just because
there's an H in there.
Oh,
yeah. Actually, the Chaldean way is Esshaki.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
You want to try to say it like that? No?
Okay, I'll try it. Wait, say it again.
Esshaki.
Esshaki. You look on your face.
You need some work.
Thank you, Father. Thank you very
so much.
That was great.
Thank you, Sai.